Inspector Bag. I watched her take it. My brother's tone cracked like a lash, loud enough for every head in the living room to swivel. He was breathing hard, clutching at his chest like some shattered victim. And then came the last blade. She grabbed Grandma's ring. She's been envious of me forever. I swear the silence that followed sliced into me sharper than any knife. Mom's gasp wasn't doubt. It was certainty. Dad's eyes narrowed, not at him, but at me. In that single heartbeat, my whole worth was weighed by their suspicion. Hi, everyone. My name's Marble. I'm 26. And in that instant, my blood murmured the cruelest question. How do you fight for honesty when your own family craves a lie? The officer was already inside the house, his boots dragging mud across our pale carpet. He gave me a polite nod, but suspicion flickered in his eyes. Because who thinks a sobbing son could be the liar? My throat tightened as he stepped closer. He said softly but firmly. I have to inspect your purse. Every set of eyes clung to me. Mom's crossed arms, Dad's heavy sigh, my brother's fake tears dripping theatrically on the floor. I wanted to shout. I wanted to cry. Search him. Search his room. You'll see who he truly is. But all I did was inhale and hand over my bag. The leather groaned as the officer unzipped it. A hush spread through the room, dense enough to choke on. My brother leaned in, nearly smirking like he could already taste triumph. And then, there it was, the ring tucked in the corner pocket as if it had always been mine. My knees shook, heat climbed my neck, and still I stayed silent. I heard my mother's whisper. I knew it. The officer glanced at me, ready to say something official. But then his hand halted, because under the ring, tucked too perfectly in the fold, lay something else, something he hadn't expected. He drew it out slowly, brows knitting, my brother's initials stitched across the tiny cloth pouch it had been hidden in. My brother's face drained of color, the first crack in his act. If this has ever happened to you, write it in the comments. The air shifted in that room, but I stayed silent, pulse pounding. Because sometimes the truth doesn't roar, it waits for the right silence to cut through. The officer held the small cloth bag between two fingers, tilting it to the light. The stitched initials glinted back like a confession no one wanted. CR, he said evenly, eyes sliding toward my brother. That's you, isn't it? My brother's lips parted, but no sound escaped. The fake sobs had vanished, leaving only a tremor of panic in his jaw. Dad stepped forward, frowning. What? What is this supposed to mean? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hands trembled too much, my chest hollow with the weight of their betrayal. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd see the truth unravel before them. But then my brother snapped back, his voice shaking with false outrage. She's framing me. Don't you see? She planted the ring in my bag first, so when it turned up, she could flip it on me. He turned to the officer, eyes wet again, weaponizing his tears. She's always despised me. She said she'd ruin me one day. The lies crawled through the room like smoke, filling every corner until even I couldn't breathe. Mom clutched her chest, nodding slowly as though his words made sense. Dad muttered, "That sounds possible." Possible. That word broke me harder than the charge itself. The officer's gaze flicked between us, calculating, but professionalism kept him quiet. He slipped the ring and the cloth pouch into evidence. "We'll need to handle this formally," he said, voice clipped. I stare at my parents, searching their faces for even a flicker of faith in me. Nothing, only the same dull disappointment they'd always reserved for me, as though I'd been born guilty. But my brother, he couldn't meet my eyes, and that told me everything. The seed of fear was planted, and I knew it was only a matter of time before his perfect performance crumbled. The question was, would I survive the storm before that moment arrived? And in the quiet hum of the officer's radio, I felt the story. Turning against him, not me. The officer clipped his pen back into his notebook, his face unreadable. "Both of you must come down to the station. A formal statement will be filed, and the evidence will remain until this case is settled." My stomach twisted. A station, a record. Even if innocent, the stain would cling to me forever. I opened my lips to protest, but before I could, my brother cut in, seizing the moment. Of course, officer, I'll agree to anything. I just want my grandmother's memory honored. His tone overflowed with sincerity, but I noticed the flicker of triumph in his eyes. Mom touched the officer's sleeve. Please, just do what is necessary. I cannot bear this shame any longer. Her words pierced deeper than the accusation itself. Shame? She wasn't even waiting for proof. She had already chosen me as the disgrace. I whispered under my breath, You really believe him? But silence answered. That was enough. The officer pointed to the door. We'll ride together. Both sides of the story will be heard. I picked my purse back from the table, fingers brushing the empty spot where the ring had rested. A cold fury began to root itself in me. I hadn't chosen this fight, but now something inside swore I wouldn't just clear my name. I'd expose him so thoroughly that even his crocodile tears would fail him. As we stepped outside, the night air slapped me alert. The cruiser lights flashed across the house siding, painting everything red and blue. My brother shuffled behind, pretending to wipe his eyes, but I caught the curl of his lips, a smirk he thought unseen. I saw it, and I etched it into memory, because one day that smirk would be the very proof that ended him. The officer swung open the cruiser's back door for me, voice steady. Please. I slid in, heart hammering, staring at the reflection of my brother's false innocence in the glass. The drive wasn't only to the station. It was the beginning of my reckoning. The police station smelled of burnt coffee and paper, sterile, unforgiving. The officer guided us into separate rooms, a thin wall dividing our voices. I sat in a chair too stiff for comfort, palms damp against a steel table. A recorder clicked alive. State your name. Marble Ray, I whispered, throat parched. The officer leaned closer, pen steady. Tell me what happened. I drew a breath, forcing strength into my words. I didn't take that ring. I would never steal. My brother planted it in my purse. He's been jealous for years. Every success of mine, he twisted into bitterness. Tonight was his theater. He wanted me destroyed. I described the cloth pouch, the initials, the smirk he failed to hide. The officer jotted notes, glancing up now and then, scanning my face for cracks. But my truth held steady, breaking through humiliation like weeds through stone. When I finished, he gave the faintest nod. All right. Through the wall, muffled tones rose. My brother's voice strained, cracking under pressure. He was rambling, repeating, anger bleeding through the rehearsed sorrow. The officer returned, a slight smile tugging at his mouth. Interesting. His version doesn't quite line up with yours. In fact, it contradicts itself more than once. A warmth spread in my chest, not relief, but vindication taking root. Yet the damage lingered. My parents had already called, siding with him before the dust even cleared. Their words replayed sharp as glass. We can't bear this shame. Why would you do this? Even if cleared by law, their judgment would not fade. The officer shut his notebook. We'll hold the evidence overnight. You're free for now, but prepare yourself. Truth rises, and when it does, it cuts without mercy. As I stepped back into the night, my brother's eyes locked with mine across the lobby. For the first time, his expression wasn't smug. It was taut, frayed. He knew the lie was unraveling, and I knew I wouldn't let him end it. The ride back was stifling. The cruiser's tail lights vanished, leaving only the orange glow of our porch lamp, waiting like a silent judge. My parents stood at the doorway, faces carved with disappointment. Not at him, but at me. Mom's tone was sharp, brittle. You've humiliated us enough tonight. Go upstairs. Her words struck like a gavel. No hearing, no defense, only sentence. I glanced toward my brother. He hovered just behind her, arms crossed, lips pressed thin. But his eyes, oh, they betrayed him. Fear rippled beneath that surface calm, fear that the cracks from the station would spread here. I climbed the steps slowly, each groan underfoot echoing like a countdown. In my room, I locked the door, pressed my forehead to the cold wood, and let the silence devour me. On my desk sat my journal, pages crowded with months of records. His taunts, his schemes, the times he wasted money never his, the way he bent our parents against me. Tonight wasn't a lone betrayal. It was the peak of years of slow poison. I wrote again, capturing every detail, the officer's find, the initials, my brother's contradictions. I wasn't merely defending anymore. I was building evidence, a blade sharper than steel. Below, muffled voices rose. My brother was spinning his story, painting me unstable, manipulative, ungrateful. And my parents, they drank in every line. I shut my journal, a cold calm settling inside me. If they wouldn't believe truth spoken, they'd believe truth revealed. I would gather proof so undeniable, they'd have no space to twist it. Because betrayal, once sown, blooms differently in each soul. In mine, it no longer rooted as despair. It became strategy. I cracked my window, the night air cool on my skin, and whispered to the dark. You wanted me destroyed, brother, but you forgot. Every lie leaves a trail, and I've already begun to follow yours. The next morning, the sunlight cut harsher than usual, slicing across my room like interrogation beams. I hadn't slept. My journal sat open on the desk, its pages heavy with inked truths. I slid it into a drawer, locked it, and slipped the key into my pocket. Today wasn't about enduring. It was about watching. Downstairs, the smell of burnt toast clung to the kitchen. My brother was already there, slouched low, eyes shadowed. He looked smaller than usual, like the night had stolen something from him. But when he saw me, his shoulders stiffened, and the smirk returned. Morning, thief, he muttered, biting his toast. My jaw clenched. Strange. That cloth pouch with your initials didn't seem stolen. Enough, both of you, Mom snapped. We will not live like this. But her glare cut only at me. Always me. I studied him closely. His fingers trembled slightly as he lifted his cup. His overconfidence was cracking, and cracks widen fast when pressure builds. Later that day, I caught my chance. His door was ajar, unusual for someone so guarded. On his desk lay a wrinkled receipt, half hidden under papers. I pulled it free, pulse racing. Jewelry store. Dated 2 days back. A repair for a ring clasp. My breath hitched. Grandma's ring. He hadn't stolen it last night. He'd had it longer, long enough to plan this. I slid the slip into my pocket just as footsteps creaked down the hall. His voice barked, sharp with suspicion. What are you doing in there? I turned, holding his gaze with the calmest smile I could form, looking for truth. And I had just found a piece of it. His face blanched, then hardened with fury. Stay out of my things. But the damage was done. For the first time, I held a card he couldn't explain away. And deep down, I knew this wasn't survival anymore. It was war, and the evidence was stacking in my favor. By nightfall, the house felt like a stage, every shadow heavy with tension. My brother paced the living room, restless, phone clutched tight. I sat quiet at the dining table. The jewelry slip folded inside my pocket like a hidden weapon. Dad came home from work, fatigue etched across his features. I got a call from the officer today, he said flatly. The words sliced through the room. My brother halted mid-step. Your stories didn't match. That ring pouch, it's suspicious. For once, Dad's eyes didn't target me. They hovered on him. My brother's grin flashed too quickly, too practiced. Dad, she's twisting things. You know how she is. His tone wavered. I leaned in, voice steady, deliberate. Then explain this. I slid the receipt across the table. Mom peered down, squinting. What is this supposed to prove? My stare never left my brother. He took Grandma's ring to a jeweler days before the so-called theft. He plotted this. He planted it. My brother lunged for the slip, but Dad snatched it first. His gaze skimmed it, darkening. Is this true? Silence. A silence denser than any lie he'd ever spun. His throat moved, but no words formed. Mom's face folded, torn between reflexive defense and creeping doubt. Tell me it isn't, son. But he couldn't. His hands trembled. His lips parted, then sealed. The act was shattering blow by blow. A cold calm surged through me. Not triumph, something sharper. Vindication. At last, the weight shifted off me and onto him. Dad slammed the receipt against the table. You've disgraced us all. My brother's eyes darted to me, rage burning through his panic. He knew I had cornered him, yet he also knew one thing more. This wasn't finished. He'd fight filthy. And I understood then. Unmasking him to our parents wasn't enough. His fabrications had to unravel until no corner remained to shield him. This was just the start of his collapse. The house lay hushed the next morning, shame draped heavy over the walls. My brother stayed upstairs, absent from breakfast. Dad sat rigid, newspaper untouched. Mom stared blankly into her tea. I stepped into the kitchen, the air still swollen with last night's collision. They said nothing, so I did. I'm going back to the station today, I whispered. The officer should know everything. The receipt, the lies, all of it. Mom's gaze flickered with guilt, the kind that arrives too late. Dad simply nodded. Do what you must. Truth deserves to be heard. Those plain words felt like a quiet victory. At last, he wasn't doubting me. At the station, I handed the receipt to the officer. His brows arched, and for the first time since this spiral began, his tone held certainty. This confirms it. Your brother staged the theft. The report will state that. Relief flooded me, not loud or wild, but calm and steady, like breath released after years of holding. That night, when the officer returned with a final statement, my brother's mask split apart. He tried to argue, but every excuse slid away like watered-down stone. His lies had no ground left. Mom wept in silence. Dad stood immovable. And me? I just watched. Because revenge wasn't screaming, nor throwing betrayal back at him. It was this, standing quiet while truth cut on its own. Later in my room, I pulled out my journal. Beneath pages of scars and betrayal, I wrote the last line. Justice doesn't need noise. It only needs proof and time. I shut the book, slid it into the drawer, locked it away. Not because I still needed it, but because I'd already lived its ending. As I switched off the light, my reflection caught in the mirror. For the first time, I didn't see the family's disgrace. I saw the one who endured, who waited, who won quietly. And that was enough.